Hello and welcome to this edition of Olsem Wanen. Tonight we feature the PNG poultry industry. We talk to the key stakeholders of the sector, and the Health Department brings to light a series on HIV and AIDS as a lead up to the World AIDS Day. But first, here is a brief look on the poultry sector.
The agriculture sector has always been the backbone of the country. Almost 90% of the population are subsistence farmers, engaging in a variety of agricultural activities to help sustain their livelihood. In recent times, the focus has been on improving the agriculture sector through road and infrastructure so that farmers can have access to both commercial and public markets. One of the silent achievers in the sector is the poultry industry. And according to the Poultry Industry Association, smallholder farmers are worth 400 million kina, while the industry as a whole is worth close to 700 million kina.
The PIA stands for Poultry Industry Association. So it's not a new association. However, for a long period of time, it wasn't really active. In the past 2 years, it has been very active, and going forward it will be very active. So it's combined of full members and associate members. So full members include the major poultry producers in Papua New Guinea, the commercial poultry producers in Papua New Guinea, New Guinea tailbirds, CLTC, Dothan and Zanag. Now the associate members include the tens of thousands of Papua New Guinean farmers out there, smallhold farmers. Every time somebody buys a carton of day-old chickens, they pay a royalty of 1 toya per bird to the PIA. And so that's where the PIA gets its funding. So the PIA consequently then does things which are in the industry's best interest. So in the last 2 years, most of its involvement has been in regard to liaising with the government in trying to address some of the biosecurity flaws and the biosecurity issues being faced by the industry. The reason for that is because the PIA at this point has identified that as being the single biggest threat to poultry farmers in Papua New Guinea. We are, as it stands, Papua New Guinea is exceptionally lucky in that we are one of a handful of countries free of the world's worst avian diseases. And yet, as it stands, we are exposed to disease risks that countries worldwide consider unacceptable and unmanageable.
According to the Poultry Industry Association president, the industry, even though self-reliant, has not received enough support from the government and is therefore working on bringing the poultry profile to the fore.
So a lot of what the industry has done in the last 2 years has been trying to, one, raise the profile of the industry. I think because it's not an export industry at this stage, that it doesn't get a lot of attention from the government. And so we've tried very hard to raise the profile of the industry so people start to get an understanding of just how much is at stake for Papua New Guinea if it loses its poultry industry. On the kina value, we're probably talking about the second largest agricultural sector in Papua New Guinea.
You're watching Olsem Wanen. When we come back, we look at the role of the National Agriculture Quarantine Inspection Authority. You're watching Olsem Wanen. The National Agriculture Quarantine and Inspection Authority plays a pivotal role in ensuring the biodiversity of Papua New Guinea remains free from pests and diseases.
NACIA is a biosecurity authority established by an Act of Parliament our main mandate is to protect PNG's plant and animal health. It's including marine life, the environment, you can say the biodiversity. And secondary to that is to protect, facilitate trade.
We basically deal with animal health in terms of diseases that may cause an emergency of sorts. Like the main clear example would be a disease that we don't have in the country that is incurred through various means. And then we have to be out on the lookout for these diseases and through the pathways that exist for them to potentially enter the country, and then be able to communicate with the districts, the local communities, the provincial administrations, NGOs that exist in those various localities, and respond to diseases quickly, because if it spreads, it becomes a bigger task.
In recent times, Nakia has had to deal with the recent suspected avian influenza outbreak in Vanimo. This has prompted the PIA to question the efficiency of measures taken by the organization in terms of the imports of frozen chicken products.
Many think that we are there to impede trade. We are not there to impede trade, but to facilitate, help trade to progress. Doing that, our job is to make sure that what comes in, our imports, does not come with pests and diseases that affect our flora and fauna, our biodiversity. We have operations division. They are at all our borders. Border posts, those declared international entry points, like the Port Moresby or Jackson's Airport, Port Moresby Wharf, where goods and people come in from overseas.
The highly pathogenic avian influenza virus, to be more precise, because avian influenza comes in various severities, if you like, different types and presents different severities. As you may have had H5N1, for example, the H and the N refers to surface proteins of the virus. There's about 16 H possibilities of proteins and about 9 possible N proteins. So any combination of those. So H5N1 is one combination. So it depends on the various combinations. They present various or differing severity or how they affect poultry. The symptoms are mainly respiratory. It affects the lungs, and there's coughing and a lot of frothing, a lot of salivation and discharge from the mouth and nose and eyes. A lot of gasping for air, and some are even neurological. For a naive population, if you like, that is not exposed to such a virus, the most striking thing can also be sudden death. Sudden death, a large number of deaths in a very short time, can be the only clinical signs you get, and none of these other signs. So, in endemic countries where the disease is endemic, you may see clinical signs develop, but in a country like PNG, sudden death could be the only thing we observe.
In the last 2 years, we've got 2 independent reports done by poultry veterinarian specialists in regard to what the risks are being faced, what the status of Papua New Guinea's disease is in the poultry industry at the moment. And as I said, we're literally amongst a handful of countries who are free of the world's worst avian diseases. What diseases are they? They include diseases like Newcastle disease and bird flu are 2 of the biggest ones that people know. However, we're exposed to a lot of risk. So what is that risk? And that's been the point of a lot of discussion. There's risks across our border with Indonesia. That's a huge risk factor. Indonesia doesn't have the disease status that Papua New Guinea have. Unfortunately, they have a lot of diseases over there. We're very fortunate we don't have many. They have a lot. But there's also other disease risks. For example, the two Newcastle disease outbreaks that we've had in Papua New Guinea, one in West New Britain and the recent one up in Vanimo, at this point are believed to have been from the smuggling of birds on logging ships that have come into the country. So that's a huge concern. However, there's other risks as well, and the risk we're most concerned about is the disease risks of uncooked poultry products coming into Papua New Guinea. So that's table eggs and frozen chicken. People seem to have this perception that because it's frozen, it doesn't carry diseases, and that is simply not true.
When imported, they are in various stages of production and processing. You know, some are imported as meat, fresh meat. Some are processed meat. Some are smoked. Some are canned. So we consider all the risks that may be presented in those various stages. And then, of course, there are live animals that we allow into, but live animals are only pet animals, cats and dogs that actually pass quarantine in Australia and New Zealand only. So those are the live animals that we deal with. But of course, there is also a recent interest in live cattle from Australia, as you may know. The last time we did that was in the 1990s. Not anymore until in very recent times there was talk about live cattle import. So we are working to develop protocols for that. Semen, reproductive material for pigs and cattle. We manage the imports of those as well. There has been imports of live pigs in the very recent past. So all those, yes. So in various forms of animals and products of animals.
With the influx of employees by logging companies across the border, Vanimo recently experienced a virus outbreak which was contained by Nakia.
The current incursion and the recent disease problem that we have in Papua New Guinea at the moment is in Vanimo, Sandaun province or West Sepik province. And that is not avian influenza. That we must clarify from the start. It's not avian influenza, it's Newcastle disease. Very similar in its effect in poultry, with respiratory signs as we described, and some neurological signs as we discussed previously. But also, as I said, it could be just sudden death. And that was the symptoms that we saw in Vanimo. And following investigations, and we got some samples, sent them to laboratories in Australia, and it was confirmed as the Newcastle disease. So it's a very similar disease in terms of its effects in chickens. It's an important disease for poultry producers and for trade. You don't want this disease in your country if you are to have a very successful poultry industry for commercial scale or even for a smaller scale too. So it is a disease that we actually had an incursion of Newcastle disease in Rabaul in 2006. We managed to clear that up. In 2010 we declared freedom, and at this point in time it has been successful in the eradication in Rabaul, and we are doing work similarly to eradicate the disease in Vanimo.
I think there has to be a lot more awareness about the importance of biosecurity in Papua New Guinea. Now, Nakia is like a lot of other government organisations in Papua New Guinea, and there's lots of people within Nakia who do a very good job with serious capacity issues. If we have a look at the recent Newcastle disease outbreak in Vanimo, an isolated part of the country, not well connected by transport, a small number of birds that needed to be eradicated, and yet it took, Nakia doesn't currently have the facilities to identify Newcastle disease and the strains of Newcastle disease when those outbreaks occur. So as a result of that, the eradication program has been delayed significantly and was delayed significantly. Of course, in a situation like Vanimo, that's worked out okay. A situation like West New Britain, that's worked out okay. We're dealing with relatively low levels of bird populations, sparsely populated areas not connected to the rest of the country. If we get a disease outbreak in the Moribi province, that situation would not be okay. These diseases have to be, in order to control them or manage them, these diseases, you have to be able, and you have to have the capacity to stamp down on them very quickly. If you have a look at the situation in Australia right now, they have quarantined Well, 2 farms have identified avian influenza on, bird flu, and they've quarantined another one which they've identified as a high risk because of its supply routes. Now, frankly, NARCIA, nor the PIA, nor the PNG government has the capacity at this point to be able to deal with one of these outbreaks on a commercial level.
This is Olsem, Wanen. We travel to Leh now and take a look at the poultry industry there.
Our mibla table beds one time mibla rotate them and bring good service come inside the community na mibla all in the place. Na plenty benefit them like same school fee lol piginini or some lol need na some like and all something number mibla like him like mibla saksim. Na this like help mibla go through.
Janet John is an outgrower for New Guinea table birds, one of the biggest chicken manufacturers in Papua New Guinea. In every batch, she manages up to 8,000 chickens.
This la time we all imported kagaru come inside time and was a mipla drop, big drop down go down okatalo.
In the last 12 months, her business has not been doing too well. Overseas chicken imports, competing with locally made products from New Guinea table birds, mean that she's unable to sell her birds to the factory as quickly as she used to.
Now this last time tasale mosem mipla lugum mosem time gagman iwok lo importing mol kagaru lo outside come inside lo country blumble mipla lugum mosem mipla line of place na mipla loud grow mosem mipla bung big pla heavy lilik. Na this la heavy am affect mipla na all kagaru we mipla salim 35 look out in 35 days so lem 5 weeks na mipla salim go lo company nam take mi pla long pla time lilik na delay lilik na mi pla stop long pla time lilik na kagaru kem westing plant KK na labor to emol making plant yatok.
Her husband John Kengo is also a contractor for the company. He transports chicken feed to other outgrowers. Together, their annual income is about 70,000 kina. But chicken imports sold at a fraction of the price in Leh City have put a dent in their income.
Me play patient big play. Me contractor, me say carry feed, me deliver feed go all out growers. Me say working money learn now me looking more same down big play down Paul come up life me on the family. Time me carry more feed go and me working money and I blow display. And I learn me by tax blow government too.
But chicken imports sold at a fraction of the price has put a big dent in their business income.
Bagrabe me come up because Kagaruk Bonarable country come inside and I'm killing the Kagaruk Blumi. Table birds. Olsem, so me like him. This la government please me begging me must stop him.
The chicken manufacturing industry in Papua New Guinea is one that is interdependent on growers, feed suppliers, and a nucleus containing a factory. If the factory is unable to sell processed chicken, farmers and feed suppliers won't be able to keep their jobs. New Guinea table birds recently cut back on the number of growers.
A concern for me long imported chicken is that we seem request long all DOC farmers from all over PNG. And on average, we should be supplying the market, PNG market, like 2,000 to 3,000 cartons a week. But because imported chickens they come in, our company has cut down on the placements. So I can only supply 1,000.
Line lo place all no making money now. All dropping me pla. All dropping me pla now. All finding ways blow liad long making more narable business. Na can say me every customer. Me 65 to 600, 700, 800 day old chicks. Na me am agent block chemical. Me say making me every distributor but now me looking more say me no na go through.
The company terminated the services of more than 100 chicken farmers. Jacob Warako is one of the growers who was terminated recently.
This is Olsem in province down the livelihood bloom blown man of place. Suppose table birds working cook work past time through. Emidu lol man of place. Kim Sala business come la hand blown. Session in good place down blown. Sense in life blown.
It's not just the chicken farmers who have been hit hard. Other companies who supply chicken feed are also feeling the pinch.
I may even come ask him chemical, table birds and all this low line long. Same Kagrugi or Antaplong islands. Now, me come lo chemical, Paul Boss Lokemika was a midplay at some carpenis na. All stock feet na Kagaruk was a midplay. Salim went up Long Highlands and before years I planted as all. Now only giving reason of some all current planty all kind of some all Kagaruk na stock feet come long offices so got planty cargo long Karam went up na.
Farmers understand what's happening. The imports of products and the lack of protection means local industry is slowly being strangled. Those affected are calling on the government to step in and resolve the issue.
You're watching Olsem Wanen. The Department of Health Clinical Division has taken the initiative to talk more on the spread of HIV and AIDS as a lead-up to the 2013 World AIDS Days commemorations. They will focus on the clinical aspect of care, treatment and counseling throughout this month on the program.
This unit, the STI HIV program, looks after the clinical component of the national STI HIV/AIDS response.
The first AIDS case was confirmed in 1987. Back then, there was no proper understanding of the virus, and so care and treatment were not properly addressed until the mid-90s when AIDS cases started increasing. These days, infection rates are equal amongst male and females aged between 25 to 35, and most spread the virus through unprotected sex or mother-to-child transmission.
From the database, the epidemic is mostly concentrated among the age groups of 25 to 35, but anyone from the age group of 15 to 60 can be affected, and we have records that shows that young youths who are as young as 14 years old that is directly contracted the infection through sexual intercourse, but also we have children who are born to positive mothers, and we have older people over the age of 55 also living with the virus. First case of HIV was detected in 1987 in Port Moresby General Hospital. Since then, so much has been happening, and at the same time, in terms of service delivery and putting in a response in place, at a time when not much was known about the HIV epidemic in this country, and also the infrastructure and manpower was lacking at the time. Since then, many people from outside has predicted that the epidemic will be like the ones in sub-Saharan Africa, where you'll have more than up to 30–40% of the population is infected. So with that, the government has committed a lot of resources, support, and also partners from outside. Multilateral and bilateral donors and other NGO groups have contributed a lot of resources in addressing this issue. Also, prevention is very important, but now we are moving on to the new strategy, which is about strategic use of resources and try and target key affected populations or populations who are most at risk, what we call as MAPs. So in that way, we don't thin out our resources by thinning out and getting nothing, but we try and target where we think the problem is, we think where the epidemic is concentrated, and we try and put in strategies there to achieve the best results. The MAPs are men who have sex with men, female sex workers, or people who are engaged in transactional sex, like people who sell biosex or people who use sex as a means to do some sort of favor. So, and also people whose job require them to be away from their regular partners, like highway drivers, long distance highway drivers, LNG workers or resources workers. I mean, rural resource workers were factories or mines, even people who work in jobs where they are not required to be at home, like disciplined forces, and these are the groups that are most at risk of contacting with the HIV virus.
Unfortunately, that's all we have time for. Do remember to drop us a line to the address on your screen and or our Facebook page. Until then, have a good weekend.